What up, guys? Welcome to the Base Damage Podcast. And this week, going over a couple updates, preparing for a couple of the new sets that are going to be coming out. As well as, let's see, this week will be the week that our buddy Waifu Wars, Bentley, is going to be going going over to Japan. I say up, but going over to Japan for Worlds, which is going to be freaking awesome. Best of luck there to you, bro. But yeah, let's get right into this. A couple things I wanted to talk about today. A couple things that I wanted to go ahead and just start this off. And that is, recently there was what people know as ARG, which is Ultra Reality Games. They're an alternate circuit. I don't think they're actually like run by the card games that they do the tournaments for. As far as like they do Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments, but they're not like owned by Konami or anything of that nature. For anybody who's familiar with them in any way, shape, or form, I think they've also done a card fight at some point. So if that tells you anything, at least Bushiroad isn't involved with them. One point I actually want to go ahead and throw out there on this is the fact that I think they've done card fight before, at which I feel that they could do Weiss Schwarz, which would be really cool to have an alternate circuit for that, for like, because they do money tournaments for a lot of stuff. ARG does a lot of different money tournament style things. I think they've held their own regionals before. I could be incorrect on that. For mainly for Yu-Gi-Oh, I think they do some MTG. I could be completely incorrect on a lot of this. Forgive me. I'm just trying to go based off what I remember. I personally have been to 2 ARG events for Yu-Gi-Oh a couple years back, and both times were very, very awesome. It was interesting experiences overall. As far as the people that I was playing against were very awesome people, and I very much enjoyed that player base, for at least the people I played against. My buddy Robbie, sadly, he got disqualified for someone else marking his cards in a prior game. And dude, man, saw his new opponent saw that and was like, "Hey, look, you got marked cards, bro." And Robbie couldn't prove that it wasn't him. You gotta like when it's like, oh, these aren't just random marks on cards. These are specifically 3 cards that Robbie ran a play set of. A play set of one particular card, and every single back of those cards were marked. Just saying. It looks suspicious as fuck. And on that note, there was a ARG recently. Robbie did not cheat, but anyway. There was an ARG recently in which I think it was in Vegas. I could be completely wrong. And a whole bunch of the people in there were caught cheating in some way, shape, or form. So I know there's been a lot of issues with that in the Yu-Gi-Oh community recently. But either way, I would like to be able to see that if they can do Bushiroad stuff like Vanguard or whatever, I would very much enjoy seeing them do something for Weiss Schwarz. That would be great. So I don't know. Maybe eventually they'll do that, because then I know they actually show up in Charlotte, North Carolina, so I can go over to Charlotte. It'd be an interesting thing nonetheless. But let's see. As far as other actual Weiss Schwarz news, they confirmed the date for Bang Dream. Bang Dream is going to be coming out like late April 27th, if I remember correctly. I don't have a computer in front of me right now, so forgive me. So that means we do not have anything projected for March, which is kind of sad. I can kind of understand them not giving us anything for January, because of Worlds. Because of Worlds is, like I just stated at the very beginning of this thing, that's coming up this week. And I can understand how they don't want people to be like, oh, well, if something was coming out at the tail end of January, that could have affected Worlds or whatever people decided to bring, whatever. Because we're getting P5 in February. Like, that's going to change as much, but I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what it does do to the meta. But oh my goodness. We got, the fact that we have something for February, they completely skip March altogether. Like, Bushiroad had next to zero problems, to my understanding, when it came to the Bang Dreams set, the first Bang Dreams set that we got. As far as in production, I don't think they had any problems. So I don't understand why they're skipping March altogether. We still have the other Love Live Sunshine E-Beat. That still doesn't have a date. At the recording of this podcast, it does not have a confirmed date, but I know we're still getting it. Or they say we're still getting it. I don't know for a fact. Bushiroad changes their minds pretty quickly. Anyway, so sadly, we do not have anything for March, and that's kind of sad because I was really hoping for something. I don't know. Maybe they'll magically pull something like out of the air. Let's try to have hope in the Bushiroad gods, right? Nah, just kidding, fam. But that being said, as far as other news sets, can't really say too terribly much else for English at this point in time, but Japan has a slew of sets announced for them, and just so many things going on for that. But one of the bigger ones, which was I want to say it was last week. It might have been, yeah, it came out last week, last Friday. Was the second Konosuba set, and I have been going over that set like the past couple days, just going over heartofthecards.com and just looking at stuff up there, and holy shit, like, okay, I don't care if people don't think this set is good. This set amuses the fuck out of me for many reasons. I've had to go and make more notes for this than I have for the past 30 fucking podcasts. So, it is, it's definitely got some interesting stuff, and I as far as where to begin, I'm just gonna have to go in order of what I noticed in each of the colors. And this isn't going to be a set overview. I'm actually going to try to see if I can get OBS working and get like an actual video recorded to post up this Thursday or something. So I'm going to try to actually aim for that and actually go over each of the cards that I feel are important, or maybe just the double rares, something. I don't know. I'm going to try something. Just pray for my computer on those upcoming couple days. Hopefully I'm not going to have to worry about a lot of this as much in a little bit, because I got a friend who's going to hook me up with a computer, and that is going to be really awesome. So, first off, with the yellow cards for Konosuba, I noticed the very, very beginning cluster of cards, something that just amused the fuck out of me. And that was, we're getting a darkness. It's a level 1 darkness that is essentially a Shimakaze combo. She gets her own buff when attacking if you have other adventure, I think it's adventure or goddess characters, I think. Anyway, it's like adventure characters, she gets a buff. She starts at 45, but she gets up to 6,000. And those, like, okay, that's cool, whatever. Okay, yeah, it's a Shimakaze combo. On reverse of the battle opponent, if you got the climax, you can search your deck for one of the traits, or one of the adventure cards or something of that nature. So, oh, that's just a Shimakaze. Yeah, sure. Most people probably don't really care for that type of thing. But it's a costless Shimakaze that the climax is a fucking 1k1. We finally got a 1,000 power and a soul climax combo off of a character that doesn't require cost. There was actually a comment in one of the videos recently. Someone was asking me about some cards on a Kontai deck that I posted. It was like, hey, this setup's interesting, but why wouldn't you try such and such for this as well? Outside of it being like the cards being in the European fleet still that we don't have at the time of this recording. The character in question, Taiho, was a level 1, but she was a cost 1. And her climax combo was a 1k1, but because of that cost 1, people aren't going to play that. Like it's not a bad card by any means of the imagination. The fact that the climax is also a 1k1, I thought was fucking amazing. Also, Darkness is a spin trigger, so that's whatever. But I just thought it was so amusing that it's something that people have wanted for so long. It's like, oh, that was like the biggest like complaint people had with Shimakaze. Like you had to substitute in other cards to make up for the lack of damage, because the previous Shimakaze climax combo, for those who are not familiar with it, was a draw 2K and a soul, so you only gave a soul to one character. It wasn't an even spread of soul damage. Sure, it's not going to be as big, but as far as big of a buff. But the cool thing is, when you played that on at least one Shimikaze, she became at least a 7,000. With this, the darkness effect bumping her up to 6K, and then the climax is still 7,000 before any other buffs for both of them, respectively. But because of this, for Shimikaze, you couldn't give that buff to multiple Shimikaze, so you had to pray if your opponent hadn't already walled up or you got to level 1 late, that you could somehow still get over shit. And that was where stuff came into effect. But with this, it's still, you can drop 3 darkness and they're all 7Ks. No other effects required, but you can still buff them up further, which was... When I read this and saw this, I was like, the fuck, this shit is great. Okay, I'm happy. Like, I probably won't even still get invested in this set if it comes over here. But I like seeing that kind of stuff. It's like, thank you, Bushi, finally getting your fucking shit together. Now, the downside to this is she's only a 4,500 base on defense. So, she's still got the chance to get hit by a lot of stuff, so people may still question her as far as running her or not, but that's fucking fine to me. I don't care. It's like, okay, I got her. I got my uses out of her. That's whatever. There's also some other interesting little plussing combos later in this set, but that was like the biggest one for yellow. The level 3s were interesting. There was one of the bad guys that they fight in Konosuba later on is a guy named Veneer. He's like, got this mask thing. He does all these JoJo poses and everything. Is a level 3 that swaps out with another level 3 darkness that just made me remember Urza from the Urza level 1 switch combo thing from Fairy Tail. The new level 3 darkness didn't really interest me that much. Like, it was on attack climax combo to give a character, herself or anyone, a cancel burn of 2. Which, that's still really cool, don't get me wrong. But it just, I don't know, maybe I'm just used to I guess I'm just too used to Darkness Yami, the level 3 Yami from TOR, that does the multiple instances of cancel burn, that a straight cancel burn of 2 just does not intrigue me as much. That's probably still going to see play if people are interested in a different type of finisher, as opposed to the Megumin shenanigans, but not saying it's bad, it just really didn't really capture me as far as like an awesome finisher type thing. There's other stuff in here that I'm more surprised of as finishers than this, so. Oh my goodness. Oh, the next card. One of the cards in the recent AOT set, making a point to go back to this. One of the cards in the recent AOT set that I've been messing around with, and I posted up a deck for this, was a core deck based around mostly red and splash yellow. But the red worked off of like the Krista level 1 combo and the level 0 Sasha combo for a plussing engine on both. And there is a back row level, or basically a level 0 Chris character in the new Konosuba set that does something similar, that does almost the same thing as far as a plussing engine, which off of the climax combo you can, because of it being a level 0, it gives another character a Nita Minami-esque combo. When their battle opponent would become reversed, you can look at the after cost and whatnot, looking at the top 4 cards of your deck to be able to grab. It was like one adventurer or one yellow character, which was really cool. The fact that you can just grab any yellow character regardless of trait. Excuse me. I thought that was cool, and the fact that you can do that at any level. So at that point, the combo just relies on whatever characters you have that can just beat stuff down. So you could focus on characters that could wall up, and then still play your combos with this Chris back row to be able to still get advantage, which I thought was really cool and a really interesting way, excuse me, to do that. And it could be a very decent, cheap alternative plussing engine for anyone who doesn't want to invest in double rare Shimikazes, I'm just saying. So I thought that was interesting, and I felt it was noteworthy as far as that, because oh, what was it? Like, the biggest plussing engine I see that Konosuba currently has for English, for level one, for volume 1 English, is out of the fucking trial deck with the Megumin, the Megumin salvage combo, which is, that's still cool. That's whatever. But people obviously went with the cheap alternative. They're like, our level 3s are fucking expensive as hell. We're going to go with at least some kind of cheap engine. So that's fair. And I feel if other people were wanting to get into this and they're like, okay, well, we don't really want to mess with trial deck salvaging shenanigans. Let's do this Chris thing. I thought that could be really cool. Personal opinion. Sorry, this next one, my note for this was just hilarious. There's a new level 1 Kazuma that this effect was just funny as fuck to me. And this honestly, I feel that this effect needs to be talked about. Like, it's a level 1 Kazuma that when you play him from hand to stage, if your experience, which is the number of cards in your level, is 2 or higher, which is easy to pull off if anyone's ever messed with experience stuff. That is so easy, it's insane. If your experience is 2 or higher, play rock, paper, scissors with your opponent until you lose. I was like, what? Because that was one of the things in Konosuba that, like, Kazuma was really good at rock, paper, scissors. He was just godly at it. It was insane. And the effect for this was, you play until you lose, and if you won 4 or more times, burn your opponent for 4 damage. I was like, the fuck? Like, that's actually kind of insane. If nobody realizes why I'm stating this, there's a couple reasons. There's no cost. You just have to have the experience, and that's as simple as slapping an extra 3 in there. Or just whatever route you decide to take. That's fucking hilarious. And if you have 4 of these in hand, you can do this 4 times. And that's amazing before any of your attacks. It's flavor because it's Kazuma, but I don't think Bushiroad realized the issue of it being with rock, paper, scissors. They did a rock, paper, scissors thing similarly in the Milky Holmes Learn to Play deck, where if your opponent had a card, because they're assuming that both people are using the Learn to Play deck. And they basically stated you paid a cost, and if your opponent had the same type of card as you for this effect, you both played rock, paper, scissors, and whoever won got to draw an extra card. Which, that's still cool, but that was very, very conditional. This stating only having an experience of 2 for a game that rock, paper, scissors is very much a mind game. If anybody has ever messed with that game in any way, shape, or form, and depending on how a person does it, you could easily get 4 wins in a row. I'm not even kidding. I'm making rock, paper, scissors sound to be more complicated than people think it is, but that's because it fucking is. It's actually insane how consistent if you know. Okay, I realize I'm stuttering at this point. Forgive me, but I think it's a very funny card, and people need to look in the psychology of rock, paper, scissors. It's amazing. So, not saying this card is amazing. The fact of the flavor for this text, and I'm fairly certain this card is gonna get fucking played. If someone does not play this fucking card, that's sad. That's sad in so many ways. Admittedly, they basically said, okay, well, you have to win 4 times. Like, okay, cool. That's whatever. Anyway, enough of my ranting on that single card. So, another thing I noticed, and there was a similar card for this in the Ordinal Scale pack. There was a Yui that did this similar effect. There was another Veneer that had an effect to bounce the climax back to your hand. And the climax was like the split 2k in a soul to 2 characters. And that's cool. And it makes me... I thought it was kind of interesting because those effects that let you bounce back the climaxes for climaxes that don't have effects that really get to your hand. Like gold bars or pants triggers, stuff like that. I thought it was interesting that you could incorporate that, and if you don't think you're going to keep getting those climaxes over and over, be able to do that and consistently pump out damage, and the combo being bouncing them back to your hand, you don't really have to worry about not having that climax to play every single turn to push for damage. It makes me think of more like a soul rushy type thing, and I thought that was really cool to be able to use that over and over and over and over. Because the buff off of that's actually fairly nice for 2k to 2 characters, and, you know, soul damage, whatever. I just really thought that was kind of nice, and it makes me have ideas for, like, soul rushy things that I'm gonna mess around with at some point. Just a point there. Okay, getting to the end of the yellow stuff, the last, like, 2 big things that I saw were the events. There was one event that lets you end up, like, drawing cards and doing stuff, that was just pretty cool. But the other one was, like, a party-wide hexproof. And this is just hilarious to me because it was off of a level 2 event, I think, that basically just stated, like it just gives all of your characters hexproof, which for anyone who doesn't realize what hexproof is, it's not an actual ability, it's just an MTG terminology for the characters can't be targeted by stuff. Sadly, it's not like a counter event, but it's still fine to be able to play it as a normal event. Just make it go, oh, well, I know the set that you're running has Darkness Plans or Compass or something of that nature, and I'm not going to deal with that shit today. Get the fuck out and play that, and I thought that was cool. So, as to whether a lot of the stuff that I've stated for yellow alone is going to get run or not, that's a different story for a different day. I don't have that many notes for the red cards, though. Pardon me 1 second while I get a drink. Thank you. Alright, sorry, just throat getting dry there. So for the red, there was a level 3 Megumin that reminded me of one of the Harus from Nisekoi. When you play it, you have to mill 3 cards, and depending on how many cards you mill, it does X number of effects. So I thought that was kind of cool. Like, if you ended up milling, you basically had to mill 3 magic or adventurer characters or something like that to get the final effect, which was like a burn 1 on play. I forget what the other 2 effects were, but it's usually pretty cool. Like, the Haru gave herself a buff, healed on play, and had clock shoot for the turn if you ended up milling, like, 3 sweets characters. So I thought that was kind of cool. There was a new level 0 Union that worked off of the Megumin level 3 from the first set, which I thought was really cool, because I think that Megumin was the one that was, like, the most expensive. Like, at one point it was $30, $35 or something of that nature. It was the whole clock shoot burn shenanigans without even having to attack. And it was really cool that this Union literally just, like, bonds with it and has a resonate effect off of it to do some other shenanigans. I thought that was really cool. I point this out because the synergy between that set and this set, I really like the synergy of it working off stuff from each set. I noticed a couple other cards that did that, but I didn't really feel they were noteworthy. I brought in the Union specifically because the fact that that level 3 Megumin was what everybody and their fucking mother ran. So, excuse me. Oh yeah, the level 3 Wiz. I really like this because this was a restander with a stun effect. Basically, if you use the restand ability, all of your opponent's act abilities on the field could not be activated or played or whatever until the end of their next turn. So if they somehow survived, they couldn't do any act buff effects, brainstorms, anything of that nature. Because it's on the field specifically, they can still use backup characters from hand, because those are acts, I realize, but because it specifically states on the field, the backup characters don't ever hit the field. They just get discarded straight to the waiting room, which is why they don't check color. So, I really thought that Wiz was really cool, and just, one, a restander. Like, they had Eris for a restander. That's whatever. That's all good. So this was still pretty cool. My note for this next one is Last Shot Megumin. Because they made a Megumin that does not work off of a climax combo, but you end up having to, like, pay 3 stock and burn and discard 2 cards to attempt to burn your opponent for 5 on attack. The fact that it doesn't have to do a climax combo makes me wonder if people are still going to run it. Like, I would if it weren't for the fact you end up having to pay 3 stock and discard 2 cards. That is a lot. For essentially, if you look at it this way, Last Shot Xenon being able to do her 4 damage and then follow up with 3 damage because of a climax being in play, being able to push for almost a whole level is one of the really strong points about it. People are going to look at this Megumin and be like, oh, well, the 5 has higher chances of getting canceled. Yes, and I agree with that, but they probably felt it was fair because there not being a climax combo for it. The Megumin swings for 2 afterwards, and then that still equals out to 7. I'm not trying to say that they did it right, or not trying to say that it's okay because of this. I'm trying to simply express why I think they validated it. But, Last Shot Xenon was a pay 2 stock and discard 1 card, so, That's kind of fair in my mind because of it not being a climax combo for the Megumin having to pay so much extra. So, she had some other effects as well, which weren't too terribly bad, but, Anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. It's also the fact of that being on a red card. Like, red was one of the original big burn colors as far as a lot of the effects that went on. At least when I was starting to play. And as of late with, certain sets, and even within this set as well, which I'll get to in a bit when I get to the blue cards, Bushiroad seems to be trying to change up how they do effects that almost used to be color locked. It was a point that we brought up on one of the podcasts that Waifu Wars did a while back. I don't know if he's actually released this one yet, but I know we recorded it like a week or 2 ago. But he he recorded this, and that was one of the things that he mentioned was that Bushiroad has definitely strayed away from the whole color lock thing. And I thought that was an interesting point, and it's been very true for a lot of stuff. If someone sits down, like I just stated earlier with the fucking Megumin, it's a clock shoot. It's a clock shoot and a burn, so sure, it's staying true to the red burn thing, but clock shoot's usually been on green characters. So, but I can understand balancing that out so one color doesn't look stronger than another. But that's whatever. So, yeah. But there is another one. There's actually a level 3 Aqua that's a clock kicker. Which I thought was kind of interesting also for the blue stuff. Like, you're going to hear me rant about this for a hot minute. Like, just go ahead and prepare yourself for a second. So first off, the level 1 Aqua has a really interesting plussing combo. Oh my goodness, this thing was crazy. And I looked at this last night, and I'm trying to remember the exact effect now. Forgive me. Basically, that was kind of interesting because you had the chance of being able to basically get 3 cards to your hand off of 1 card. I thought that was really cool. It was chances of it though, but I can't remember it off the top of my head right now. Once again, the whole thing about the color lock. Usually red brainstormers are the ones that salvage, but there's an Aqua in here that is a brainstormer that salvages. There was a Aqua in the first set. I think it was Troublemaker Aqua. I could be completely incorrect on this, and if I am, I'm sorry. But there was either like an Aqua or an Eris that had a brainstorm effect to summon back characters. So like summon back cost 0 or lower characters from the waiting room. And I thought that was really cool because that's kind of flavor because of them being goddesses and bringing people back to life. I thought that was actually quite flavorful. Excuse me. This Aqua just being a salvage brainstormer though for like the same cost. I think it was a 1 stock rest 2 characters and the usual mill 4. Thought that was kind of cool. Actually, wait. I think that Aqua brainstormer had something to do with the Axis cult things. Yeah, before I get too far, I don't think it was off of climaxes. Like, one of the things in here, there was Axis Cult. There was an Axis Cultist Relentless Rats cards. Which, for anyone who hasn't watched the anime, they eventually travel to this town to like go to their hot springs or whatever. Or they ended up doing a hot springs thing or whatever. But while they were in the town, they kept... The town was occupied by the Axis Church. Which was like the exact opposite of the church that Darkness was I was about to say ordained. She's not a minister, but she as far as the religion that she followed, um, and it was the religion that worshipped Aqua. So this was kind of messed up. This is that's why I said I think the Aqua brainstormer worked off the Axis cult members, but that's whatever. I could be wrong. I just don't remember it off the top of my head right now. I had to look at quite a few cards, and it was like, oh my god, what the fuck is all this shit? Anyway, so the Axis cult stuff. First off, I like any effect that's a Relentless Rats effect. Anyone who doesn't know what Relentless Rats is another MTG term that is cards that state you can have any number of copies of this card in the deck, aka Printing Squad, Predation Titans, Invasion Titans, stuff like that, where it's like you are not limited to 4 copies. You are not limited to just a playset. You can run 30 copies of this card if you wanted to. And yes, by all means of the imagination, that is capable of being done, and there are people who would do that in MTG with the card Relentless Rats. It had some other buffing effects and whatnot as well, so a lot of those kind of effects don't get brought over for the Relentless Rats, or they're limited to how much buff you're able to get with, Weiss Schwarz. The example in here being with the Axis cult members each buffing up each other, by like 1,500 per, like, they state every other Axis cultist character you have gets plus 1,500. Now, here's the interesting thing with this. Predation Titans and Invasion Titans and stuff like that usually only counted center stage. These buffed each other in the backstage as well. I thought that was really cool. Meaning, if you played 5 Axis cult members, and they're like level 0s. If you play 5 copies of this level 0 on stage, they're like 1,000 power to begin with, but that also means that they're giving each other copy of themselves overall plus 6,000 power. And I read that and I was like, the fuck? That's hilarious to me, to basically drop down 7k level 0s at level 0? You're not getting over that. You gotta have removal at that point. If you do not have clock bombs, stop bombs, something of that nature, it's a pain in the ass. And I'm ranting about this because it's hilarious. It's just funny as fuck to me. And it's one of those flavor things as well, because they saw so many of these Axis cultist members in the show trying to sign them up under the church. At like every opportunity, they were just trying to either swindle them into it or just coerce them, convince them to do so in some way, shape, or form. And it was hilarious because then it just compounds, it just snowballed on itself, and it just made it for such a hilarious episode, and I thought it was great. So, but in MTG, like, the Relentless Rats gave each other a buff based off of how many other copies were on the field. The problem is with MTG, there is no limit to the amount of creatures, tokens, anything that you can have on a field. There used to be combos in which you could produce as many tokens as you wanted onto a field. And I've seen people say, I'm going to keep doing this combo over and over until I have 1 million tokens. And do this. Attack you with 1,000 of them at a time. Yeah, that's really great in a game with 20 life. Sure. What the fuck? Come on now. Anyway, because they each had 1 damage. Anyway. So that was an interesting thing to be able to see. And it was interesting to be able to see that. The reason it's not as... Relentless Rats effects aren't as OP in Weiss is because you're only limited to 5 slots, not unlimited. So, like, I know there's other Relentless Rats effects as far as in Weiss that I'm forgetting right now. Oh, Nox Core. That was another one of the big ones. Out of Excel World. My buddy Moroku ends up making a deck for that and working around the Nox Core enemy build. And I thought that was really cool. It's actually been an interesting deck to watch him play. But yeah, so the whole Axis Cultist thing in there was really cool. There's some other level 1 Axis Cultist effects as well. One of the cards that people were talking about when effects were first getting leaked was a level 2 Aqua that if your opponent had a death character, I know, if your opponent had a death character, she gained the bodyguard ability. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. This is, I mean, it's not bad. It made me more think of the, I thought it was more flavor thing off of their rivalry with like her and Wiz, because she kept trying to purify Wiz because Wiz was like a lich. So I thought that was why, because Wiz is a death character. But someone pointed out that this fucks over the level 3 Subaru in ReZero, because he's a death character, and his level 3 shenanigans stuff was insane. Like you could heal off a whole bunch of damage. You could do a lot of shenanigans with him. And apparently that was something people had a problem with, and someone was... I don't know how true this is. I could be completely wrong on this. But I thought that was funny, and people were saying, yeah, no, this counters the level 3 Subaru because it has to frontal her, and there's no way that they can use the effect afterwards. That's what I understood it as. Or that's what someone explained to me as, because I don't remember that level 3 Subaru's effect off the top of my head at all, other than it was a massive-ass cost. Like, you ended up paying like 7 cards in some way, shape, or form, between hand and stock. I forget how much it was. It was a lot. So that level 2 Aqua I thought was really cool. That's not really going to do much in the English meta as far as right now, because outside against other mirror matches, as far as against Konosuba decks, you're not really going to run into a lot of it unless your opponent just happens to unfortunately be a fucking Angel Beats player. That's the only other one I can think of right now that had the death trait was Angel Beats. Like, that's just the only one off the top of my head that I can think of. Which, I mean, that's whatever. But, you know, if we do get ReZero, you know, based off that one poll that apparently Bushiroad had a while back, if we ever get ReZero, that would be really cool. And that would be one thing they'd have to worry about if they play against Konosuba. So, anyway, I ain't got to worry about that effect, because I'm not going to be running that level 3 idiot. So, that's whatever. I have other decks I'm going to make off of ReZero, because I am very much anticipating that set in Gurren Lagann anyway. So, anyway. Much better. Alright, yeah, so one of the bigger ones, and I had to say about the Axis Cult thing as well before this. The level 3 Aqua has a chance to clock kick off of an effect. And her effect being, when you play her, you can put up to 3 Axis Cult members under her as a marker. When her battle opponent becomes reversed, for every marker under her, your opponent sends that many cards from the top of their deck to the waiting room. And if there's a climax amongst them, she clock kicks. So it's after her damage, and basically the extra chance you can have of trying to get the climax is off of another event. So you play her, you put 3 markers under her. There's another event in blue, it's a level 3 event, that states you can put up to 3 more markers of the Axis Cultist members from the waiting room under that Aqua. So you basically had the chance of your opponent milling 6 cards after they reverse to see if they hit a climax within those 6 cards to clock kick. You know, if that doesn't, you know, push them to refresh for game anyway, that'd be great, but that's whatever. But once again, that being a blue card with the clock shoot ability, clock kick, whatever you want to call it, is another one of those Bushiroads stepping outside of the normal color range. So, let's see what else. There was a level 1 rest counter, and I mean rest counter that only targeted level 1 or lower. I thought that was weird. I just kind of felt that needed to be put out there. One of the other big, last big cards for it was it was one of their counter events in the fact of, it was a counter event that you paid the stock and your opponent got rid of all of their stock until the end of the turn, in which they got all of that stock that they sent back. But it's a disruptor in the sense that if your opponent tries to pay for the stock for effects, like, okay, let's say your opponent had Switch Combo, or your opponent had Last Shot Xenon, other massive cost restander effects, stuff like that. The fucking Subaru, like we mentioned before. Stuff like that. you completely get rid of your opponent's stock, and then they don't have enough stock to operate around with their finishers. And that's one of the reasons why it was so, why people were like, oh no, this is fucking great, you know. Sure, it's like a massive 3 cost, and it depends on who you're playing. That's kind of the big issue that I saw with it, and I say that's an issue, but it really just depends on the meta as whether you run this card to begin with or not. But it really depends on who you're running against, because sure, if your opponent is a dumbass and pays out all of their stock, you know, or just didn't have enough stock, I say dumbass, but if they didn't have enough stock for something like the last shot Xenon combo, or whatever, sure, you can disrupt some of the last shot Xenon stuff as far as English meta. I'm not even going to try to get into JP meta, because I don't know what shit they have to deal with. I don't know all of the shit they have to deal with. I know very, very few decks from there. As far as English stuff right now, TLR would not have to worry about it at all. As far as offensively, they could still do it defensively and go, okay, I stated that reverse. They wouldn't be able to get rid of you wouldn't have to worry about getting rid of stock for when the Yamis are swinging. But if the Yami effects don't kill, they have to rely on Darkness Plan. So one thing, because of the event from Konosuba being that thing, you can actually play that on your turn, get rid of all your opponent's stock, and stop their money counters as well. That would be one of the bigger reasons I would want to run it. So you have to look at what finishers am I going to have to deal with, and what decks have rest counters or money counters that I have to worry about as far as them having stock. And that's one of the bigger reasons to run it, in my personal opinion, is sure, depending on who I'm going against, what finisher they got. Okay, whatever. More often than not, I'm going to have to worry about a money counter event in that regard, because that could just say, nope, you don't win. Oh, I just happened to poke for the exact amount of damage that I need, and you're like, nope, pay 3 stock, get it the fuck out. So, yeah. Anywho, that's enough of my thoughts on this. As far as other thoughts for other like sets and whatnot coming out, I am actually very interested in when they start revealing Fate Apocrypha stuff. The Fate Apocrypha set, I just finished the anime for Fate Apocrypha, and it was fucking great. For anyone who's not watched that, go fucking watch it. You will be doing yourself a favor. Sure, a lot of people didn't care with some of the ending stuff. I don't care. It looked fucking great, and it actually had a decent ending. Like some of the endings that people have seen for a lot of Fate stuff, they just were not satisfied with some reason, shape, or form. I was actually kind of satisfied with this ending. It was pretty good. So, anyway. That being said, thank y'all very much for watching, listening, whatever. Hearing me rant about cards and all sorts of other shenanigans going on. And y'all people at ARG, quit fucking cheating. Y'all just... Actually, to round this out, last thought. The problem with the ARG thing... Sorry, I realized I didn't state this in the beginning. But the people who were caught cheating didn't really get punished. And that was a issue, because the dude who won it got caught for cheating. Like it's like, no. This is a fucking money tournament. I would have kicked your ass out. Done. My thoughts. With that, thank y'all for watching. It's greatly appreciated. If y'all want to subscribe, cool. If not, that's also good. Thanks for listening to me rant for fucking 43, 44 minutes. And with that, I'm going to bounce off for here. This is Kool Aid, and we will see y'all on the flip side. Peace out for now.